In 1967, the Beatles set up their own company, Apple. This would give them more creative freedom. It would also allow them to create their most experimental album up to that point, The Beatles, or as most of you probably know it, The White Album. However, by late 1968, Apple was bleeding money, and nobody working at Apple was happy with the financial situation. To make matters worse, in October of that year, Stephen Maltz, the Beatles' accountant and financial advisor of nearly 4 years, decided to resign. Alistair Taylor explained the seriousity of the situation to the Beatles, and this is where Dr. Beeching's name first crops up. Apple is far too big and complicated a business to be run by Neil and me, Alistair replied. We are not up to the job, and I include myself in that statement. This company needs a figurehead, a proven businessman. You need someone like Lord Beeching, otherwise we'll all be on the scrap head. With that, he closed his briefcase and walked towards the door. Everyone was quiet. The Beatles had been needing not only a proper manager for Apple, but also for themselves for some time. After their longtime manager Brian Epstein sadly passed away in August of 1967, they'd more or less been managing themselves.
Ever since Mr. Epstein passed away, it's never been the same.
I mean, we've been very negative since Mr. Epstein passed away. And that's why all of us in turn has been sick of the discipline we lack. We've never had discipline. We've had sort of slight symbolic discipline, like Mr. Epstein. You know, and he sort of said, get suits on, and we did. There really is no one there now to say, do it. Whereas there always used to be. But Daddy's gone away now, you know. And we're on our own at the holiday camp. And, you know, I think we either go home or we do it.
So in 1969, propelled on by Paul McCartney, they finally decided to get a proper manager. John Lennon met with Alan Klein in January of 1969 and was utterly charmed by him.
Well, I'll talk about it when we're doing it. Just that I saw Klein and that, you know.
Oh, Klein?
Yeah, Klein, Alan Klein.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's very interesting. I just think he's fantastic.
Really?
Yeah. But I mean, I'd just like you to see him, you see, that talk. It doesn't matter. He's not, you know, it's like that. Like, he knows me as much as you do. Incredible guy.
So John was really eager for Klein to manage, and after talking with George and Ringo, they became in favour of Klein too. However, Paul was not. Paul did not trust Alan Klein, as Lee Eastman had informed Paul about Klein's dodgy business practices, and Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones allegedly wrote a note to Paul warning him of Klein, who had managed the Stones previously, telling Paul to stay away from him. So Paul pushed for other people to be interviewed. There were a few potential candidates, and one of them just so happened to be Lord Richard Beeching, or as known to most of you, Doctor Beeching. Now, Dr. Beeching is famous, or should I say infamous, for writing the Beeching Report, or to give it its proper name, the reshaping of British railways. This report was one of the main factors that unfortunately led to a lot of the branch lines and secondary routes in Britain being closed. However, in 1969, Beeching was seen as one of the top businessmen in Britain. Whether he actually was or not is a topic for another day.
They said, who are we going to get? We looked at Lord Beeching. We looked at all these people. John interviewed Lord Beeching because he's done the railways, so great. I mean, are you kidding? But we called Mr. X. We knew we needed someone after Brian. And so we had a meeting in Iceland and said, we really need Mr. X. And if we can get someone really great, it'd be fabulous. So then the Beeching thing came along. And then
So John Lennon met with Dr. Beeching, and by all accounts, the meeting didn't go very well. Beeching telling John, stick to making records. John Lennon said of that time, I met a lot of people, including Lord Beeching, who's one of the top people in Britain and all that. And though he didn't want to take the job, Paul had told me, go and see Lord Beeching. So I went. I'm a good boy, man, and I saw Lord Beeching, and he was no help at all, and he didn't look nice. He was alright. John was in favour of Alan Klein though, so I can't imagine he enjoyed these meetings or put in much effort, knowing how much he wanted Klein. Alan Klein did eventually become the manager of the Beatles in May of 1969, and the manager of Apple Corps, a decision that John, George and Ringo would all later regret. After the Beatles broke up in 1970, Paul McCartney ended up suing the rest of the Beatles and Alan Klein. Klein even laughed at him when Paul told him he was going to sue. Paul won the case, and later down the line, John, George and Ringo ended up getting rid of Alan Klein too, realising Paul had been right all along.
John, can you tell me what happened with Alan Klein? Why did you and the other two try to decide finally to get rid of him?
Well, there are many reasons to finally give him the push, although I don't want to go into the details of it. Let's say that possibly Paul's suspicions were right.
And eventually, Alan Klein went to jail for fraud. But in the words of Ringo Starr,
but that's another story.
But can you imagine a reality in which Doctor Beeching also managed the Beatles? That's certainly a very interesting thought. Well everyone, I hope you learned something new. But also, most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know in the comments. If not, also please let me know. I want to go into this new year really knowing what my audience wants. So thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.